Good evening and thank you for joining us. The conduct of a political staffer has escalated into a battle between the mayors of Côte-des-Neiges NDG and the central city. It began last night. Sue Montgomery made accusations and today Valérie Plante fired back. It appears neither side is backing down. Matt Gilmore reports.
Responding to questions from the public at her first borough council meeting since being removed from the Projet Montréal caucus.
It's been a year since the city rejected body cameras for Montreal police. Now the opposition has brought the issue back, claiming it would help fight racial profiling. Angela McKenzie reports.
The question of whether Montreal police officers should be equipped with body cameras is still up for debate.
It's in their interest. It prevents false accusations, and it also heightens public confidence.
The opposition.
The education minister is taking issue with the CEGEP based in eastern Quebec. It offers English-only classes to international students at its Montreal campus. Jean-François Roberge wants CEGEP Gaspésie et des Îles to offer French classes.
I understand that they made something to bring some international students, so we won't ask them to close it.
Roberge says he's confident he'll reach an agreement with the CEGEP. The Federal Court of Appeal has dismissed a legal challenge to the Trans Mountain Expansion Project. The decision allows the construction on the pipeline to continue, and it coincides with a visit by Alberta Premier Jason Kenney to Montreal. Stéphane Giroux reports.
It's a major victory for the Alberta government. The Federal Court of Appeal lifted a major barrier against the construction of the Trans Mountain Pipeline.
Mementos belonging to Jean Beliveau are going up to be auctioned. Among them, the skates he wore and one of his Stanley Cup rings, and one item that might be the only one of its kind. Here's Rob Laurie.
Jean Beliveau won 10 Stanley Cups, played in 13 All-Star games, and was adored by fans and admired by...
Coming up, the U.S. presidential campaign gets off to a chaotic start. And the day before the impeachment vote, Donald Trump speaks to America. And CTV News continues with a look at some of the hour's top stories. Canadians in Wuhan are being told to prepare for a charter flight out of China on Thursday. The airlift comes as British Columbia confirms a new case of coronavirus, bringing the total number in Canada to 5. Education Minister Jean-François Roberge tabled more than 80 amendments to Bill 40 today, but they do not affect some of the most controversial aspects of the bill, the abolishing of school boards. Students are planning a protest next month demanding more action from all levels of government on climate change. The group is planning a week of action at the end of March. At least 14 children were killed in a stampede at an elementary school in Kenya today. Another 40 were injured. The cause of the crush is still not clear, but authorities say it was not caused by some kind of scare. U.S. President Donald Trump will deliver his State of the Union address tonight. The speech comes on the eve of an all but certain acquittal in his impeachment trial. Serena Marshall reports from Washington.
President Trump heading to Capitol Hill tonight to deliver his annual State of the Union address, talking inside the chamber that just 6 weeks ago voted to impeach him. That trial in the Senate.
The leadership race for the Green Party of Canada begins today. It's the party's first leadership contest since 2006. Elizabeth May stepped down following the October election, but she remains the party's leader in the House of Commons. The Greens will elect their new leader in October. Meanwhile, Conservative leadership candidate Peter MacKay was refusing some questions during a one-on-one interview. It seems he didn't want his comments on Twitter to become part of the conversation. Heather Wright explains.
Iggy can do things that we can't do.
Peter MacKay invited CTV News along for a visit to Boost, a child advocacy center that helps victims of abuse. He co-chairs.
Coming up, Bombardier in dire straits and looking to sell again. And in entertainment, an escape from Montreal's underground city is now a giant game. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. An update now on Canada's first case of coronavirus. A man in his 50s is in stable condition in Toronto. Public health officials are now tracking down other passengers who were on the same South China Airlines flight. They're adamant the risk to the general public is still very low. Annie Bergeron-Oliver has the latest.
A fresh warning tonight from China's president that the country is facing a grave situation as the
2 more bodies have been found in the search for the missing snowmobilers. They were found this morning more than 3 kilometers from where the search started. A 7th snowmobile has also been located. A group of tourists went through the ice in the Lac Saint-Jean region on Tuesday. Divers found the body of 58-year-old Gilles Claude on Friday. 2 other people have yet to be found. Police are searching for a young man who went missing in Terrebonne on Saturday. 18-year-old Simon Martel was visiting friends on Chapleau Street when he went outside to get some air. Police say he decided to lie down in his car. When his friends went to check on him just before 1 a.m., he was no longer there. Martel is approximately 5'9" tall and weighs 140 pounds with short brown hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information is asked to call 911. Tomorrow marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp. More than 1 million Jews and others perished there. Today, survivors, including some Canadians, remembered the horror as they returned to Poland to commemorate the Holocaust and their suffering. Paul Workman reports.
75 years ago, they arrived here as children. Today, as aging witnesses to the final solution. Greeted by the head of the World Jewish Congress under the
The Montreal Holocaust Museum is trying to help teach children about this dark chapter in our history. The hope is they will remember the atrocities of the past so they aren't repeated in the future.
Love, and within the confines of a very, very horrific place.
It's story time at the Montreal Holocaust Museum. Author Anne Renaud is here to share the story of Fanya's heart, about a birthday card in the shape of a heart Fanya's friends made for her while they were imprisoned in Auschwitz.
Every story needs to be preserved somehow. Every story needs a voice and is important. And so I felt this is the story that I wanted to bring to young readers.
Parents brought their children to learn and to make their own hearts, to take home and bring the lessons taught with them.
We can sit around the table and it's very casual, but there's also a story attached to it, and it's not.
And later on in the show, Dorothy Zalkman-Howard from the Montreal Holocaust Museum will join us to discuss the anniversary and the impact in Montreal today. It's Muslim Awareness Week in Quebec. The goal is to build bridges between the communities and to fight fear and ignorance. This morning, the congregation at St. James United Church was treated to a different kind of sermon. Matt Gilmore reports.
Sunday service at St. James is all about inclusion. The doors are always open to members of other faiths and communities. And for Muslim Awareness Week, Reverend Arlen Bonner is turning the pulpit over to a Muslim scholar.
This week is about bringing the different communities together. There's a lot of commonalities among these, at least the 3 monotheistic communities.
Bacchus used the stories of Jesus and Mary as told in the Quran to connect with this Christian congregation.
Muslim Awareness Week was initiated in the wake of the Quebec City mosque shooting. Alexandre Bissonnette was sentenced to 40 years in prison for murdering 6 people, and now the length of the sentence will be in question tomorrow in the Quebec Court of Appeal. Bissonnette's lawyer will argue the sentence is unreasonable. The Crown, which had initially sought a 150-year prison term, will ask for an additional 10 years. They will argue the current sentence doesn't reflect the gravity of the offenses.
Look at drive times coming up in just a moment. But first, here's Andrew Brennan with today's headlines.
Thanks, Catherine. And we begin with flood watch. We were spared a lot of the rain we were promised yesterday, but more is on the way before the week is done. And the rivers are rising again. Around Quebec, there are about 2,500 homes flooded at this time, up about 500 in a day. About 1,000 people also have been evacuated. Nearly 2,200 homes also isolated by floodwaters, cutting off road access. The flooding has also led to a boil water advisory for Île-Bizarre, Sainte-Geneviève. It's being called a preventative measure, but people should be boiling water for several minutes before consumption. The advisory is for residents between Paquin, Roy, Monique, Jean-Yves, and Sacré-Cœur Street, plus everyone living on Île Mercier and those in the trailer homes in Wilson Park. Officials advising residents actually to boil water for at least 5 minutes before consumption. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with some Quebecers who've been forced out of their homes due to the flooding. Trudeau visited an evacuation center in Gatineau yesterday. The Prime Minister also took time to thank the military for its work in Quebec, also as well in New Brunswick, which is coping with flooding as well. He says all levels of government are doing what they can to help residents, but Trudeau thinks these floods are telling that climate change is a new reality Canadians have to accept.
We need to make sure that we're continuing to work well, all orders of government, municipal, provincial, and federal, as we are, to ensure that we're keeping people safe and supporting them through these difficult moments. But at the same time, we also have to reflect that with climate change, we're going to see more and more of these extreme weather events more regularly. It means we have to think about adaptation and mitigation and how we're going to move forward together.
In Gatineau alone, over 300 people have registered as flood victims. Now, the mayor of Montreal trying to reassure Montrealers facing the floodwaters that the city is doing what it can. Valérie Plante says everything is in place, but it is hard to fight against Mother Nature.
Pessimist, but there will be flooding. Houses will be flooded. It's because we're reaching a limit in terms of with the precipitation and the weather outside, it is not helping. That being said, and I've said it in the last few days, we've been working really hard to prepare. All the boroughs are doing an amazing job, the service de police, service des incendies, but there's a limit to what we can do.
36 homes have flooded just in Montreal, mostly on Ile-Bizarre and the West Island. Over a dozen people have also been evacuated, this in the past day, and about 50 homes are isolated as well by water. The city is taking steps to cut single-use plastics and other waste in Montreal. This would include new rules on plastic utensils and forks, foams, and other kinds of food packaging like coffee to-go cups. Montreal wants these items banned or strictly limited by next year. The city will hold public consultations to sort out the exact rules. The mayor says she wants to work with big companies and plastic producers, from coffee chains to straw makers, to stop making more products that will just spend decades languishing in landfills. The SQDC is raising cannabis prices across Quebec. The government-run pot stores say the 5% hike is to adjust to what it calls the reality of the market. Nearly all products are seeing a price jump, which averages out to about 40 cents per gram. The SQDC does remain the cheapest on average in Canada, offering legal marijuana from government dispensaries. The Journal de Montréal reporting that the SQDC's expenses, though, have doubled in the last quarter, despite putting its expansion plans on hold. Supply issues have kept the SQDC from opening more stores, but it aims to have 27 more open by the end of March 2020. And for more local news, tune into City News at 6 and 11 p.m. And if you have a story idea or a suggestion, we always want to hear from you. Drop us a line at tips@montreal.citynews.ca or reach out to us on Facebook or on Twitter. Now, in other news, the assault trial for former Afghanistan hostage Joshua Boyle has been temporarily suspended, and this delay is expected to last weeks, even months, while the court determines whether Boyle's sexual history with his wife is admissible evidence. Boyle has pleaded not guilty in an Ontario court to offenses against his wife, Caitlin Coleman, including assault, sexual assault, unlawful confinement as well. The offenses are alleged to have happened in 2017 after the couple returned to Canada. They were held for 5 years as captives when they were seized by militants during a backpacking trip to Asia. In international news, a 34-year-old man has been charged after a car in California plowed into people on a crowded street. 8 were injured Tuesday night in Sunnyvale, about 60 kilometers outside of San Francisco. Police say it appears the act was intentional. The car sped through an intersection and made no effort to stop, according to witnesses. The youngest victim was only 13 years old. The driver has been arrested. And in Syria, Russian and Assad government airstrikes have turned deadly. You can see workers crying out as they work frantically to free a man trapped in the wreckage of a bombed-out building in northwest Syria. At least 17 people were killed when an explosion toppled the structure. It happened in one of the last remaining rebel-held areas in Syria, roughly 2 hours outside of Aleppo. The city has been bombarded in recent days by airstrikes led by Russia and the Syrian army.